Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, warshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor. Today we're continuing our Tier 8 carrier theory crafting series as we take a look at Tier 8 Premium American carrier USS Saipan. Saipan is just a very unique carrier in the tier. The only thing you can really compare her to in this tier, in general, really, is Indomitable, right? Because she has very small squadron sizes, very few planes on deck, but these are high tier planes with a lot of health. And so you kind of have to play her very, very conservatively. Starting off here, spawning on the south side of Land of Fire, I reach for, as I commonly do early in a match, these are Saipan's rocket planes, but these are different than most of the rocket planes you're used to getting on American carriers up to this point. Up to about Tier 6, you're stuck with the 5-inch rockets, the HVARs. Starting at Tier 8, you get to choose between the big tiny Tims and the HVARs on both Midway and Lexington. Enterprise is forced to use the HVARs, and Saipan is on the other end of the equation. She is forced to use the big tiny Tims with well over 60 millimeters of pen in each one of these rockets. And these rocket salvos are not large. You're only putting 6 rockets down range, but they hit pretty decently. You see there, I clipped about 4K off that Leander. It wasn't a great salvo, but it was a decent hit. He'll have to burn a repair, and, progress towards his next heal, he has to push there. But I mainly want to just get a squadron over to that kind of side of the map to scout. And as I launch the next one off my deck, you'll see I do something you'll see me do lots this match. I immediately pre-drop and get rid of 2 of the planes and send them back to the deck. As I notice the B cap is being capped, and so I pull these rockets out, and we're going after this Moss who has decided to smoke. But he smoked up too late. I had already begun my run. I knew exactly where he was. I put 3 rockets into him. That's good for almost 5K. If you can get these rockets to connect with destroyers, they do hurt. The trick is there's only 6 rockets in that salvo. So you gotta get a little bit lucky. You got a little lucky, and you gotta make sure that you come at that salvo kind of just from the right angle. It takes some practice. Going out again for the 3rd time with the rockets. There's a Shiratsuyu in the cap now, and my thinking is, okay, I want to go back up the Shira. What I'm thinking this guy's gonna do is he's gonna move up here and just sit at the far end of the cap and just hold the cap back. Because remember, the Moss is a hydro destroyer. The Shira cannot push him in smoke. That's just not going to work, right? The Moss will spot him. And that's probably where the Shira is now. The Shira is probably lit up on his Hydra, which is why the Miyoko and everybody's shooting at him. So I dump a fighter. I dumped the fighter too soon. There is a mistake in this play here. I dumped the fighter on the south side of the cap. I should have dumped it, waited about 3 more seconds, and dumped it right over the middle of the cap. So that's on me. But in the meantime, I see the enemy Implacable has put his fighter down, and so now I'm trying to back off, and I'm going to wait. I'm doing one of the things. I'm going to wait this fighter out, or as you see what happens there, my fighters move up and engage his fighters, knock him down, and now I can move in on the Moss again. Now you can see there I hit him for about 5K to start things off. That was a nice solid hit with only 3 rockets. But he goes narrow to me here. This looks like it could be a good drop, but again, it's all about the RNG. I only get 1 into him for another 12 or 1300, and, well, bummer. But I do succeed in driving him off the cap as the Shiratsuyu runs for the edge. Now, the Shiratsuyu he's kind of trapped, right? He's on the north side of that island. He's got a Nagato crawling up his stern. He's got a Leander and a Fubuki off his bow. There's pretty much nowhere he can go. And initially, I grab the rockets for 1 more attack. I want to find this Moss, but the Moss is clever. He has his AA turned off. I'm not going to just stumble across him randomly. And so I end up settling for an attack, a rocket run on the Miyoko, which is not going to net me a whole lot. Not a great use of my time. So as I come back to the deck, I realize what I need to do now. I need to start thinning the AA out. And I initially grab the rockets once again. I mean, look at this. I'm just cycling these planes on and off my deck because I'm so close. The cap is right there. I actually, again, the Moss is lit, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to go up here and get a drop on the Moss. But then I have a look at the Nagato's health, and I realize he must have eaten a couple of Shiratsuyu torpedoes. I got money, says I can get some torpedoes to stick onto this guy. And so, for the first time this game, I reach for Saipan's really, really, really nasty torpedo bombers. These are the same torpedo bombers carried by Tier 10 American carrier USS Midway, the BTD destroyers. Each plane carrying 2 torpedoes. Now, Midway drops these in squadrons of 3. In Saipan, each one of these drop runs is a squadron of 2, so they put 4 torpedoes into the water. But these are Tier 10 planes versus a Tier 10 Japanese battleship. I'm not expecting a whole lot of anti-aircraft interference here. And so I go in on this attack run with the full squadron. I don't pre-drop, knowing I'm going to get probably at least one, if not two runs in. He's slowing down. He looks like he's trying to make the turn back into the cap. You see there his bows on fire as we get 4 into the water and a nice little drop, and he eats them all. When you put all 4 of these torpedoes into somebody in one of these mid-tier games, man, they're gonna know that they've been touched. These things hit like trains. I only have to get a couple of these in probably to finish this guy off, and yeah, get those into the water, pull the whole squadron out, and he's gonna be off the board momentarily as soon as those arm and run into him. That does become our team's first kill, as we've surrendered a ton of board control and are upside down 1 ship 6 minutes into the game. Now, I grabbed the dive bombers. My plan here is to go bomb on, love on that Miyoko a little bit with some of these 2,000-pound HE bombs, because again, these are the same bombers, the same bombs packed by Tier 10 American carrier USS Midway. So these are basically Tier 10 planes, Tier 10 bombs and armaments in a what can very commonly be a mid-tier game. You see here, I'm top tier. I'm Tier 8 in a Tier 8 game. This is really good matchmaking for me, by the way. Saipan struggles. I don't say she struggles. She up tiers better than a lot of other carriers because of her plane strength, but it is still a challenge because her squadron sizes are so small. You still have to play very conservative with her planes and take fewer risks than you might otherwise take. Miyoko was leeching off of the moss smoke there as I come back to port, and this turns out to be probably one of the best bomb drops I have ever gotten with these bombers. I put 4 bombs down, I land 3 for a triple fire and about 6k damage. Unfortunately, of course, he puts that fire right out, and now it becomes difficult to try and get back on his bow to get another good drop, right? I know I'm going to lose that 3rd plane, and sure enough, it goes into the drink right there as I start my run. And now he's got probably the best angle he could get to me. That's the really bad angle for me, and I blow this drop. It's well astern of him, and I don't get anything else out of those planes, which is a bummer. So now we go back to the torpedo bombers. The thinking here is, you just watched what these torpedoes did to a mid-tier battleship, and so now I'm kind of thinking, well, I know what I can do to a mid-tier cruiser. Let's go catch this guy. It's a Miyoko. He doesn't handle all that well. But the team is now 400 points down. We're 2 ships upside down. We have no cap control. We barely have any vision on the side of the map over here over at sea. So initially, my plan is to go back and strike on the Miyoko. But as I look at the minimap, I see this North Carolina and this Edinburgh pushing down the 7-8 line into the sea cap, while my team has basically cornered itself on the 9-10 line. And we have a destroyer over there who's literally playing behind the entire team. He's getting a lot of flack in chat because of it, honestly. My thinking is I'm going to go in for a run on the North Carolina, but the Edinburgh pops up right in front of me as he slows down trying to smoke. Slowing down his engines makes him a really easy torpedo target. And so I get these into the water while I can still see him. And rather than suffer, I went ahead and pulled the entire strike out. Only 1 plane down on that. Well, 2 there. A couple more. I have a couple losses on the way out the door. But you see there, look at what I did to this guy. He took over 21,000 damage because I landed every single torpedo. Against Tier 8 ships, these torpedoes hit like trains. So now my thinking is I'm going to come back intentionally with an understrength torpedo squadron. I don't want to risk the entire squadron again. As we're starting to make up kills now, we've gone on a 3-0 run, so we have a ship lead with about we're coming up on the halfway mark of the match, but we're still way down on points. Since they got the Edinburgh, I don't want to mess with the North Carolina yet. I want to get this Miyoko off the board. I had pulled back, right? Look at where I am. I'm on the island. I don't like my hull position in this moment. I want to be moving north. But this Miyoko is getting really aggressive, and I feel like he's trying to hunt me a bit. And so I'm doing 2 things here with these strikes. One is I'm keeping him lit for my team, trying to entice maybe that North Carolina or somebody way over on the 2-3 line to take shots at him. And it is working. The North Carolina is definitely taking some shots. But maybe I can also get some damage into the guy. That first drop was not bad. He just turned into it. This drop is just not good. I don't lead him quite enough, and he ends up turning out of most of it. He only eats about 1 of those, I think. But my team now is on a 5-0 run of kills, and we're finally clawing our way back into this game. Look at that, 6-0. We were down 3 ships to 1 at one point. Now we're up. We're up on ships, big time, as the team over at A has finally made steady, good progress, and will be capping that. Well, I was going to start capping that point very, very soon. For me, I still want to get this Miyoko off the board. I grabbed the dive bombers and going back, knowing what I did to this guy with the bombers last time. But, remember I told you the North Carolina was looking? Yeah, he was paying attention, and that Miyoko is off the board. So now with a 4-ship lead, we're just now crossing the halfway mark of the match, and things are changing pretty quickly here. Things are looking up, except for me, in the sense of my hull position is once again not so great. If you remember, we're about to see a team kill. Feels bad. Remember, kids, torpedoes are not your friends once they're out of your tubes. You gotta know what you're doing. But if you remember the Enterprise game that I published just last week on this exact same map, I ended up in almost the exact same position with my Enterprise hull as well. In a position in the game where it was like, oh, I need to be doing better. I need to be closer to the action, and so on and so forth. Enemy teams made up a couple of kills, but we still own 0 caps. My team over at A declining to cap anything. As I decide I want to bring the dive bombers in on this surviving Chapayev. They're down to just this chappie right here. The Fuso you can see over on the 3 line, and then the enemy Implacable is somewhere, presumably up along the A line. We don't know where. Put a good 7K into that guy with a fire. These 2,000-pound HE bombs do really, really nasty things to light cruisers. Like these bombs do really good work against a variety of targets. The AP bombs have that alpha strike devastation, right? But out of the Japanese carriers, but it's not to say that these bombs are any slouch by any means. With the Chappie beat up a little bit, he takes a couple of fires. The enemy has now clawed back more kills as we're finally onto both B and C. That's going to slow the bleeding. But once again, temporarily, we were upside down 400 points again, even though they only have a couple of ships left. This badly gutted Chapayev and the enemy Implacable, who's somewhere. Haven't found him yet. Sailing over the sea cap, I consider dropping a fighter on this Mogami, but when I'm looking at the map, I'm realizing that the Implacable's bombers are over on the Fuso. And so now I'm bringing the rockets in. I know the amount of pen I have on these things will absolutely do good work against this Chapayev and probably get him off the board. He's just eaten a torpedo or two from the friendly Gade that he did kill the Gade. The Gade was over on the 10 line, so he popped his radar and got rid of that guy. The Colorado could probably bag this guy eventually, but I don't want to wait. I want him dead. And so I've got my rockets here, and mission accomplished. And just like that, with 7.5 minutes to play, the enemy Implacable is now the last surviving ship, and we have a lot of ground to make up on points, well over 200 points. Now, I drop a fighter here because I'm trying to spot for my team. If you've ever put yourself in a position where you've had to have one, the enemy carrier is the last thing, and all you have are your planes, right? You know, of course, you're going to go attack the enemy carrier. What else? Like, you know, your planes aren't doing any good sitting on your deck. But carrier sniping at this tier is not simple. It's not a straightforward operation. And especially with Saipan. Saipan and Indomitable have one really, really big vulnerability, and that is catapult fighters and patrol fighters and combat air patrol fighters. Because the fighters do not care what the health of your planes is. Enemy AA, when enemy ships are shooting at my planes are very tanky. They have lots of health. I've buffed their health and their survivability. They can take a punishment on the way into a strike. But enemy fighters, they don't care what my plane's health is. They're simply going to show up and blow planes out of the sky at a 1-for-1 rate. Fewer things will devastate a Saipan faster than blindly sailing into enemy fighter squadrons. So you have to play very cautiously and very smart. So you can see here that rocket squadron that passed me a second ago dropped a fighter here off my starboard side. I'm intentionally avoiding this guy, as now he's he'll bring something off the deck shortly here. He's got bombers landing. Right now, I'm just keeping him lit for the Colorado and the North Carolina, which are the two big things that are going to be able to damage him. He's probably not in the Mogami's range quite yet. And at this point, once I kind of creep ahead of him, I decide I'll take the risk with the torpedo strike. Now, this is a risk because I'm flying into his AA under the fighter cover, and the fighters will come down and get me, and he drops another fighter consumable right there as his rockets come off the deck, or his torpedo bombers come off the deck. So I only go in with the one strike and immediately pull everything else out, hoping I can salvage some of it, because Saipan's planes are pretty quick, and I do get 10k, a solid little hit into him there, knock out his rudder, but of course his DCP will fix that up very quickly. So now, my challenge is a little different. I have to try and shepherd these surface ships towards an Implacable who is going to be continually throwing planes at him. Over the next few minutes, you're going to see me try and drop fighters over here to discourage him from striking these guys. And in fairness, they're not going to do they're not going to do as much as I would like them to have done for their own survivability. However, there's something else I don't do that I could be doing, and that is, as you see, I'm coming up the 7-8 line there on the minimap. I could, as I come around this island chain, I could turn to the west and go meet them, go share my area. Saipan's AA bubble is very small. We're going to talk about one of her other vulnerabilities in a moment. But I could go take my AA and lend it to this North Carolina in this Mogami, and I don't do a very good job of that. I didn't realize later, until I was watching the replay, that I was like, I should have done a better job of this. I'm trying to take the HE dive bombers in on him, but his AA is already beating up the squadron. Here comes the fighter, and ultimately, this squadron will not survive to drop a single bomb, because fighters. Saipan's nemesis. Something else I want you to notice when talking about Saipan, look at the minimap. You see how small my AA bubble radius is? That's a little 3.5 kilometer radius. That is Saipan's AA radius. Saipan has zero long-range anti-aircraft fire. So it's all Bofors. These were light aircraft carriers that weren't actually put into service until after the end of World War II. So they only have the Bofors as their primary anti-aircraft defenses. What that means is that Saipan, if you're not careful, she is a little more vulnerable to being carrier sniped than any other Tier 8 carrier. So keep that in mind when you're fighting an enemy Saipan as whatever you happen to be driving in a carrier. If you have the opportunity, his AA is not what you're used to dealing with from American carriers. Enterprise and Lexington have brutally punishing AA bubbles. Good luck pushing home a strike on those guys. But Saipan is the exception. Bringing back a full torpedo squadron here. I'm just trying to get these into the water. Again, going in up against his fighters and his AA. I'm sorry, these are rockets. I'm sorry. I brought the rockets out. I do get 7K into him, some more damage as I pull those out.
Fighter airborne.
And, a little Confederate medal, you know. But you can see now it's taken us, 3 or 4 minutes to finally catch back up on points. This friendly North Carolina, I've tried to do what I can, shooting down planes and everything, fighter cover, but he is eventually going to succumb here as I stupidly drive through this fighter and get half my squadron shoot up before I can get these torpedoes into the water. North Carolina does manage to cling to life here. I apologize, I got it wrong. He does survive, but boy, he was down to about 4,000 HP there. You saw how low he was. But we are finally going to get this Implacable off the board right as I get these torpedoes into the water for a nice little solid team win here on Land of Fire. So one of the reasons that I highlighted this game, again, as we're talking to the Tier 8 carriers, one, you get to see a little bit of each type of squadron. That's always one of the goals I'm looking for in these kinds of games. The other is you get to see them do different things. For example, I use the rockets against everything but a battleship, basically, in this match. I use the torpedoes. You saw what the torpedoes did to that poor Nagato. The torpedoes are really, really, really devastating against equal-ish tier battleships, and they will do good work against even up tier. When you're up tier, they'll do good work against those battleships as well. But mostly they're really, really good against heavy cruisers. They just do horrible things to heavy cruisers. There's so many in the water. Your squadrons are so tanky. You can do really good work with these torpedoes. And then, of course, the dive bombs. The dive bombs have a lot of uses, but the trick is, like all dive bombs, you're still relying on some of that RNG. So it takes I'm still learning how to line the reticle up quite so, but you saw a couple of good drops there. I had a really trolly drop on the Miyoko, a pretty solid drop on the Chapayev. And so those bombs can also be used. I've used those to good effect against battleships like Izumo to light fires on her deck after they've repped a flood from the torpedo strike. So you can do a little bit of damage stacking here if you cycle your squadrons quickly. And the big thing about Saipan, especially in the early game, you have to pre-drop as much as you possibly can and save, conserve her airplanes as long as you possibly can. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed that one. I've got another one of these coming later in the week on Graf Zeppelin. Be safe out there. Catch you then. See you next time.